I was sitting at my sleek mahogany desk, the sunlight spilling across the pristine white marble of my apartment, when my phone buzzed insistently. I glanced down. It was a message from my husband. My heart skipped, not with love this time, but with that old, familiar thrum of irritation and disbelief. Sell your collection. Buy your brother a mansion. No excuses. I almost laughed aloud. The words felt absurd, almost comical, if they weren't so painfully familiar. I ran a hand over my silk blouse, feeling the tension knot in my shoulders, the soft fabric doing nothing to soothe the storm inside me. My gaze drifted to the floor-to-ceiling windows, to the city sprawling beneath me like a kingdom I had claimed for myself. My empire, built quietly, carefully, away from the prying eyes of the very people who once tried to clip my wings. I remembered the sting of their disbelief, the way my achievements were minimized, the way my worth was measured by my obedience. And now, here he was again, daring me to relinquish the life I had fought tooth and nail to create. I pressed my lips together, feeling a flicker of irony. Did he really think I'd roll over after everything? My fingers traced the edge of the crystal paperweight on my desk, cool and flawless. I took a deep breath, letting the silence stretch. I would respond, but not how he expected. It wasn't always like this. I remember sitting on the edge of my childhood bed, the faded wallpaper peeling in the corners, clutching a letter from my husband, back then just my fiancé, demanding that I sell the few pieces of jewelry I had inherited to fund my brother's dream home. I was 28, naive in love, stubborn in pride, and utterly unprepared for the weight of expectations that weren't mine to bear. "Sam, it's just a small favor. You can do this for me," he had said, his voice smooth but edged with something I couldn't quite name. His words were soft, almost seductive, but they carried chains I refused to wear. My brother had always been charming, reckless, and entitled, yet everyone treated him like a golden boy while I was the practical one, the responsible one, the one who measured life in pennies and sacrifices. I felt a lump in my throat, a burning mix of anger and sorrow. My hands trembled as I held the delicate necklace my grandmother had pressed into my palm years ago, an heirloom of intricate gold filigree, tiny emeralds glinting like captured sunlight. "Never let anyone decide your worth," she had whispered the day she gave it to me. "Value yourself first, Sam. Everything else will follow." That necklace had felt like a talisman that day, a reminder of the power of choice, even when surrounded by people who didn't understand or respect it. I stayed awake that night, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding, imagining the mansion, the sacrifices, the endless compromises. And I realized something terrifying. If I said yes, I would vanish into someone else's narrative, someone else's expectations. So, I said no. It wasn't dramatic, no shouting, no tears in front of him. I just walked out of the apartment we shared, the weight of his disbelief following me like a shadow. I packed a small suitcase, hugged my grandmother, and promised myself that I would carve a life that no one could dictate. I left behind not just the apartment, but the version of myself that needed approval to breathe. That night, under the dim light of a street lamp, I made a vow. I would never again let anyone, husband, family, or society, decide my worth. I started small. A rented studio apartment above a quiet cafe, a laptop that felt like a lifeline, and a heart full of determination. Every morning, I brewed coffee and watched the city wake up, the scent of roasted beans mixing with a faint perfume of my grandmother's advice lingering in my mind. I reminded myself, value yourself first. I met Mr. Lawson, a seasoned jeweler with sharp eyes and a surprisingly warm smile. He recognized something in me, a precision, a vision, a stubborn streak that refused to be broken. "You've got talent, Samantha," he said, handing me a magnifying loupe. "But talent without patience is like a gem without a setting. You've got to polish it, nurture it, protect it." Nights bled into mornings as I worked, my fingers aching from the intricate designs, my eyes strained from studying gemstones under harsh lights. I learned to appraise, to negotiate, to sell discreetly. I absorbed every lesson, every subtle technique, every business nuance like it was oxygen. And when I failed, and I did, often, I refused to quit. My first real client, a boutique owner in Manhattan, walked into my tiny studio with a skeptical frown. She had been burned by over-promising jewelers before. But when I presented her with a delicate bracelet I had designed and crafted myself, her eyes widened. "This is exquisite," she breathed. That first sale wasn't just money. It was proof that my work mattered, that I could carve my own path without anyone's permission. Word spread slowly at first, then like wildfire. I stayed cautious, never flaunting my success. My family assumed I was still struggling, that I was quietly scraping by. They had no idea that I had quietly built an empire, one client at a time, that my tiny studio would eventually house rare gemstones and designs that whispered luxury and exclusivity. And I thrived in the secrecy. My life became a careful dance between anonymity and ambition. I posted modest updates on social media, never enough to reveal the truth. Every small win, a big order, a feature in a niche magazine, a rare gemstone acquired, felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that had been doubted, dismissed, and demanded of me. Through it all, the necklace my grandmother had given me sat on my dresser, a quiet reminder that I had chosen my worth, that every late night, every sleepless morning, every whispered moment of doubt had been worth it. I was building not just wealth, but freedom, independence, and power, silent, untouchable, undeniable. And though I never allowed myself to think about revenge, a flicker of satisfaction ignited whenever I imagined the look on their faces when they finally realized just how wrong they had been about me. The invitation I sent was casual, almost careless. Dinner at my place. 7 p.m. No elaboration, no hints. I knew exactly the effect it would have. My brother thought it was just a polite family dinner. My husband, ever so arrogant, expected a meek compliance with his demands. They both had no idea. When they arrived, the doorman greeted them by name. The elevator opened to a space that was almost unrecognizable to them, polished marble floors, modern art that whispered elegance and power, light filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the skyline like a jewel box. I watched their expressions change: curiosity, confusion, disbelief. I greeted them with a warm smile, offering champagne in delicate fluted glasses. "It's good to see you both," I said, the words calm, controlled, dripping with the subtle power I had cultivated over years of silent struggle. They glanced around, eyes darting from a large abstract painting to a display case that gleamed with exquisite gemstones. I don't understand," my brother stammered, voice tight. I thought you were struggling." I laughed softly, a sound that carried no bitterness, only quiet triumph. "I was struggling," I said. "But not for long. I made some choices that didn't involve sacrificing my life for someone else's comfort." My husband shifted uncomfortably, hands tightening around his champagne glass. I gestured toward the display in the corner, a velvet-lined case holding my $473 million jewelry collection. Diamonds that rivaled sunlight, rare sapphires and emeralds, pearls that seemed to glow from within. "This," I said, letting my voice carry in the spacious room, "is mine. All of it. Every piece I've acquired and crafted through years of work, talent, and persistence. And I will not sell a single item because someone believes they are entitled to my life, my money, or my sacrifices." Shock froze them in place. My brother's jaw went slack, the usual smug confidence replaced by awe. My husband's face drained of color, disbelief etched in every line. I watched them absorb it all, the elegance, the power, the absolute certainty that I was no longer a woman to be controlled or underestimated. "You see," I continued, letting the pause linger, "while you were busy making demands and underestimating me, I built something that no one can take away. I became the architect of my life, not a pawn in yours." Tears, subtle but undeniable, welled in my brother's eyes. My husband opened his mouth, perhaps to argue, but the words faltered. The room's silence was deafening, punctuated only by the distant hum of the city. I let them stew in it a moment longer, letting the gravity of the reveal sink in. For the first time in years, I felt the intoxicating clarity of power and independence. They had come expecting the old Samantha, the obedient, pliable woman willing to bend to their whims. Instead, they met the Samantha Blake who had refused to compromise, who had built a life they couldn't imagine, and who had the wisdom and strength to demand respect without apology. I let the silence stretch, watching them fidget uncomfortably. The power in the room had shifted completely, and I intended to make them understand that this was no longer about obedience. It was about growth, respect, and boundaries. "I'll help," I said slowly, letting each word land. "But not on your terms. On mine." Their eyes widened. My brother's lips parted, as if to protest, and my husband's jaw tightened, but I raised a hand to stop them. "Listen carefully. First, my brother. You want a mansion? Fine. But you'll earn it yourself. I'm not handing you a blank check. You'll manage it, fund it, and learn responsibility. No more relying on my sacrifice or manipulation." I could see the flicker of something new in his eyes, hesitation mixed with respect. "You've got potential, but entitlement will ruin you if you let it." Then my husband. I took a measured breath, letting the words roll naturally, smooth yet firm. "You've tried to control me for years. That ends now. I'll support your ventures, yes, but not at the expense of my life, my dreams, or my happiness. You will respect boundaries. Therapy or personal growth is mandatory, and manipulation ends today." I let my gaze linger, unflinching. "You want a place in my world? Prove that you deserve to be part of it as an equal, not as a dictator." I could feel the tension in the room crackling like static electricity, but there was also a quiet acknowledgement, an understanding that my terms were fair, even if uncomfortable. I wasn't punishing them. I was guiding them toward change. Compassion didn't mean weakness. Firmness didn't mean cruelty. "And as for both of you," I added, my voice softening slightly but retaining authority, "this isn't about money or jewels. This is about respect, growth, and healing. If you're willing to step up, I'll step in. But you will follow these conditions. No shortcuts. No excuses." I could see it then, the slow nodding, the realization settling in. My brother's shoulders straightened, his usual arrogance replaced with a tentative humility. My husband's eyes softened, though guarded, as he weighed my words. They had underestimated me for years. They had believed wealth and control were the same as respect. They were learning the hard way that they weren't. And I felt the sweet, satisfying clarity of authority tempered by compassion. I was no longer the girl who feared rejection or betrayal. I was the woman who had survived, thrived, and now dictated the terms of engagement, not out of revenge, but out of self-respect and wisdom. For the first time, the room felt balanced. The scales of power, long tipped in their favor, had finally righted themselves. And I knew, deep in my bones, that nothing, not demands, not family pressure, not past fears, would ever shift them again without my consent. Weeks passed, and slowly, the changes began to take shape. My brother started managing his finances, showing a new patience I hadn't thought he was capable of. He called me one evening, voice quieter than usual, saying, "I never realized how much I relied on others. I want to do better, Sam." My husband began attending therapy sessions I had insisted upon, confronting his need to control and learning to respect boundaries he had long ignored. Each time he admitted a mistake, however small, I felt a cautious relief, a recognition that even those closest to us can evolve if held accountable. I watched them, these two men who had once demanded everything from me, begin to reclaim their own lives with dignity and effort. It was a slow, tentative process, but it was real. And it reminded me that the power I had gained wasn't just about wealth or jewels. It was about the ability to shape outcomes, to protect myself, and to foster change where it mattered most. I sat in my office one evening, the soft glow of the city lights reflecting in the polished surface of my grandmother's necklace. I touched the emeralds lightly, remembering her words, "Value yourself first." Everything else will follow. And indeed, everything had. The empire, the respect, the independence, it all traced back to that simple truth, quietly spoken years ago. I thought about the journey, the fear, the rejection, the sleepless nights, the tiny victories that added up to monumental freedom. I thought about the woman I had been, the one who left everything behind, and the woman I had become, the one who faced the past, conquered it, and offered change on her terms. And in that reflection, I understood something vital. Strength isn't born from wealth alone, nor from the ability to wield power. True strength lies in the courage to demand respect, the wisdom to set boundaries, and the grace to allow others to grow alongside you. I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from my face, the city humming softly below me. My life was mine, unyielding, unshakable, beautiful in its independence. And for the first time in years, I felt fully, gloriously free. I am not here to serve anyone's expectations, I whispered to the night. I am here to live my truth, and anyone who walks beside me must respect it.